Hey guys, Thomas Jr. here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the movie Raya and the Last Dragon. If you end up enjoying this review, then please consider joining my Patreon page. That'll be in the second link in the description below, and I'll remind you at the end of the review as long as shilling my Discord. But enough about that, let's talk about Disney Plus and its new-ish movie that I'm deciding to review now. Much like Tom and Jerry, of course, I decided to wait a bit to give this a little bit time to play out, because this will be a spoiler review, talking about all the things that happen in this story, plot, characters, all that stuff, and seeing how it all pans out. So with that being said, let's get into Raya and the Last Dragon. So the movie begins with a narration by our lead character named Raya. She lives in this seemingly broken world, as she claims it to be, and she talks about how things used to not be like this, where people in the world lived at peace alongside dragons. However, at some point in time, due to whatever, these dark spiritual things called droons started to plague the world and turned people into stones as well as the dragons. Now, the very moment I saw these things in the movie, I immediately thought and compared them to the movie from Disney, of all things, Moana. And I know that comparing movies now, especially with trying to be as objective as possible, is a bit unfair, but it's really hard when that was my very first instinct. So I immediately wrote it down in my notes just to put it up there that it did immediately remind me of Moana, but without music, in terms of this movie. So I just wanted to point that out there, that I very early on got Moana vibes from this movie. So I thought, oh, this is actually going to be really, really good, because Moana is really, really good. So I actually got my hopes pretty high up early on in the movie, and I think that was a bit of a misstep on my part. But we'll get into that as we progress through the movie. So, as we are learning more about her, Raya, we are also learning about this last dragon named Sisu, which is the last dragon that apparently sacrificed herself to save the people, or so the story went on to say. So, we cut to a flashback of a younger Raya sneaking into this temple-like area, and as she lurks inside using her ninja-like skills, she also has her animal companion named Tuk Tuk, I believe its name is, and the little, I'm not sure what kind of creature it is. It's one of those armadillo things, I think they're called, but like it has a chunky face. It's like a chunky armadillo thing that like rolls up and is able to spring all the traps, allowing her to slide underneath them. She makes her way up to this blue glowing gem, the MacGuffin of this movie, because Moana, again, much of a comparison to Moana, also had a MacGuffin glowing gem in it. See what I'm talking about? So I still had my hopes up. I'm like, okay, this is looking pretty good so far. So far, so good. But she's stopped by this mysterious masked warrior named Chief Pencha, I believe. I think I cut his name there. I'm not sure. I didn't want to, and I didn't bother checking after the fact, but whatever. And it turns out that this mysterious figure ends up being her father, who is actually testing her. And he reveals that she is a princess of heart. So she is in the newest line of princesses. Now, in terms of princesses who kick butt, she is joining that roster, as this movie does have a lot of combat in it, and she is actually skilled in combat. So in that regard, I do I'm being as objective as possible, and I would say that those are the highlights of the movie, are the fighting scenes. However, there's the rest of the movie to talk about, which we'll get into. So I thought, oh, okay, she's a princess. That's typical of Disney. So nothing new there. And as we are going through their little town and village and locate and whatever, she discusses about how there are different clans of warrior types that are around the land, and they all don these different clothings and have these different aspects to them. However, she precedes them all to their worst attributes. However, her father is trying to say that he has invited them all to try to broker peace between and reunite them uh, to collaborate and become one unified tribe, I guess, uh, in spirit of the name of the dragon, which they have a different name for it. And the different factions, or groups, or whatever you want to call them, are made up and named based off of the different parts of a dragon. The heart of a dragon, the fangs of a dragon, so on and so forth. Uh, but I'll get into the naming as we come to their specific locations, though, so I'll name the rest of them later. Anyway, so she's doing the assuming, which I guess her father taught her some of that stuff, but he was like, but we're gonna try to, uh, you know, broker the peace. And he says that the heart, or the orb thing that they have, the MacGuffin, uh, the people outside believe that to have the truest, most powerful power in the land, which is why they're all trying to obtain it for their own greedy purposes. Uh, so we have groups that are very greedy, and I do want to emphasize that because boy, does that sort of hurt the theme of the film, which unfortunately is where the weak point of the movie is at its core. But again, getting more into that later on. Anyway, as that's going on, we meet our antagonist of the movie, Nomara, I believe her name is, or something along those lines. Close to it. Close enough. I'll just keep calling her Nomara for the rest of the review anyway. She is the princess of the Fang group. And she seems to be getting pretty buddy-buddy with our lead character, Raya. And at first I thought they were going to do... And at first I was actually falling for it alongside what was happening. Again, this is a spoiler review, so I'm indicating words that are very spoilery right now. So I was actually kind of falling for her little ploy here. So she did a good job for whatever she was trying to do, and kind of technically failed to do, but successfully did. It's complicated, to say the least. In fact, I would even say that I was almost getting a hint, and I mean a hint of almost a romantic vibe, even though they just leave it at friends. And again, it comes from their connection and what they talk about and how they interact is sort of where I got that vibe minimally. Now, again, that's where the movie initially starts, but we learn that that's not where this movie is going at all. So, dash that expectation out of your dreams. You see, Raya and the Last Dragon is not caring about that theme or representation of LGBT or whatever. I thought they were going that route initially. Again, because I didn't see any trailers, I didn't see anything for this movie except for some reviews popping up. So that's all I had to go on that this movie even came out. So, anyways, the two of them are discussing the legends of the dragon in this. They sort of fangirl over the whole dragon aspect. So, Raya, being as naive as she was, decides to introduce Nomura to the little orb that they possess. So, Nomura reveals her true intent, and the two begin to clash immediately. Nomura, signals their group, the Fang group, to rush in as well, and they do so, and Raya is joined by her father. So, in the process of this scuffle, the orb shatters into, I think there's 5 groups, so I believe it breaks into 5 pieces. So each group manages to get one chunk of this MacGuffin to themselves, and they all break off from each other. However, as the people do this, the Droon, as they were referred to, these purpley demon things, return. And thus, as the Droon proceed to start to turn people to stone, people start to freak out and run away, taking their little pieces of shard with them. Raya is running, and the dad has been injured to the point of him staggering to keep up. So he decides that since he won't be able to keep up, to send Raya into the water safely, or kind of just drops her in, but she can swim, so it's fine, and drop her in the water, even though he probably could have tossed himself into the water, but I think he would have drowned. I'm not sure. His leg was injured, so I will say, in terms of defending this movie to a degree, and I know not even Angry Joe did this in his review, I will say that the father doing this did make sense. Because he would have got swept up anyway, I think. By the time frame seemed accurate to that leading up to his choice to send Raya into the water. And again, based on his injury, I'm not sure if he would still be able to swim. Like, it's a leg injury. You need, again, and I think he got injured more than that. I'm not sure. It's a tough call, but regardless, I think it's okay. Not the worst part of the movie for sure. Because boy, does the theme get funked up in this movie. Anyways, after getting tossed into the water, 6 years pass, and our young girl Raya turns into a young woman, who now has a new disposition in life to trust nobody, which is a fine position to take considering what just happened. And keep what just happened in mind for the rest of the review, because boy, does the ending, this one line that Nomura speaks that really crawls under the skin. It really makes you go, nope, that's not true at all. That's not how this works. I'm sorry, but you fucked it up. Anyways, we're gonna get to that later. So anyways, Raya continues her journey to try to seek out the dragon, and she has made her way to the last possible shrine that there could be to assemble its presence. So the water around her, behind her, starts to collect up as she's doing her prayer, and thus appears the dragon named Sisu. Apparently, she has been away for 500 years. And when she is in contact with the MacGuffin, or the chunk of the MacGuffin that Raya managed to hold on to, she glows and obtains its power. So the different chunks now possess different abilities that she can gain, apparently. So she currently, as of now, has the ability to do something with water, and each different thing revolves around water to some degree. Apparently, water is the Droon's weakness, which you would think would be a big weakness, but they try to find an okay thing around it, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, so now that Sisu is free, they discuss about what they're gonna do next. However, we also see that Nomura is still out and about on her own as well, and she's seeking out Raya for whatever intent she intends to do. So she continues to be the antagonist, keep this in mind. And thus, as Nomura closes in, Raya and Sisu continue to sort of make their way around. So, as Raya describes the reformation of what they need to do, they sneak into the next area named Tail, as in the tail of a dragon. So, the ability, as I had neglected to mention because I forgot what it was, she was able to turn human. So she has her disguise set, and they Sisu is declaring that they should be trustworthy of people, which is a complete opposition of what Raya is currently. She's very distrusting of people. And you would think, that's fair. That's a good pair of characteristics. Pretty simplistic, right? So, keep that in mind as well. So while their needs and what they want is pretty simplistic, things take a turn. So anyways, as they are sneaking around the tail area, and with Sisu as a human, Raya sets off her own little some of these other traps, and they end up on this boat, where they're introduced to the boy named Boone. Boone, apparently, runs this boat, and they're trying to get away from the group Fang that is chasing them still. So, with Boone's help, they manage to scuffle away, and they go to their next location, which is the Talon region. So, Sisu uses one of her abilities to help them travel a lot quicker, and Nomura travels on this sort of path to return to home, seeing all these dragon statues, and sort of does the unique salute that is in this movie, which is sort of like the circle symbol. So anyways, we follow the group that went to Talon. We kind of just leave Nomura to her devices. And she wants to handle this entire journey by herself, and Sisu wants to join her to try to help in the way that she believes that can be helped, which is to trust people, and that's her entire bit in the, well, a big chunk of her bit of a character in this movie. So Raya, being not that, is immediately tricked by a con baby. Yes, I am not deceiving you when I say Raya, the one who is very, antitrust, sees a baby, says, that's a bit weird, I guess I'll help, and is immediately conned by the con baby. And yes, this con baby does get a name later on, but I completely didn't hear it, and I'm just going to call it the con baby for the movie review. So, Sisu is getting bored, seeing that this is taking too long, so she makes her way into town, sort of taking objects because the boy, Boone, had taught her about how people can get, like, how people can, like, delay on buying things. And so she just trusted that instinct and took a whole bunch of stuff. In other words, the trustworthy person, or the trustworthy dragon, hidden as a person, did a bad in taking all this stuff. And so some of her trust was betrayed by the people in this instance. But Sisu, I guess her excuse is she's been away for 500 years. I don't know. They didn't really account for it in that moment, but she is excused by this elder woman who takes her away from the little crowd that is saying, hey, pay up. Which they have a right to do so. I mean, they're running their businesses, they're doing what they're doing. So anyways, while that's going on, Raya decides to continue to chase Con Baby around. And when she captures Con Baby, she decides to use Con Baby. So her lack of trust goes from, this is bad, to, well, I got you to the boat, so I might as well use you, I guess? So that completely takes a 180, but, you know, whatever. So they get their next, sphere thing, or chunk, and Sisu gains the mist power, which allows them to quickly get out of this area, but without too much trouble. However, the old lady that I mentioned earlier brings Sisu outside, tricking her into being almost consumed by the demon Droon. So the trustworthy person has been put in a position where she's immediately, the trust that she allowed to bring was immediately broken. Keep that in mind as we continue our review, please. I know it's a lot to hold on to, but trust me, it's all gonna fall apart. So, now that we have that established, Raya manages to spring into action and save Sisu. And they get back to the boat. So, while that's going on, we cut back to Fang and Nomura talking to her mother, the Queen. And the mother is talking about how how she wants to expand because they live on an island, and they never imply it, but I'm assuming their resources are running low. Again, cutting back to Moana. Moana actually said, hey, our resources are running low. Thanks, Moana, for actually just saying the thing. Anyway, back to this movie. So as this is going on, the Queen talks about how they are responsible for, quote-unquote, breaking the world, and how, since they have done this act, that they feel like they can no longer be trusted. No! Kidding. You did a major bad. You nearly fucked the world, by the way, because the June turned everyone to stone. Yeah, you would think people would be a little bit like, you kind of fucking nearly killed us. Yes, I'm gonna say nearly killed us now, because we all know where this is going, right? So anyway, after that little convincing speech, the other group, getting back to it, Raya and Sishu reach the area called Spine, and they meet this war boss when they get captured after getting captured. Meanwhile, Boone brings in Tug Tug for the save. So while they talk things out with this monger boss that ends up being a softy, kind of, but still a monger boss, kind of, uh, while they're all talking about what their plan is, uh, Nomura is closing in with her group of Fangs. She's already made her way, so the traveling in this movie for that distance, I don't know. So they're already there. Nomura still playing the antagonist, and I'm gonna keep bringing that up because. So she talks to Raya, confronts Nomura as she proceeds to get the others to try to flee. So the two of them fight each other, and like their first fight, it's probably the strongest part of this movie are the fighting scenes. It's a impressive display. But again, I have to be the one to point this out. Having just characters fight can be cool, it can be exhilarating, but when connected to every other aspect of this movie, as everything is building up to that third act, it kinda does fall apart a lot. At least in terms of theme. But if you separate theme from the fighting, again, the fighting in this movie is really strong. It's one of the movie's strongest element. In fact, I would say it is the strongest element in the movie. So anyways, they're fighting and distracting, but Raya is losing this time around. She's a bit more distracted, considering that she's being a distraction, literally. So Shizu turns to see this just in time, so she decides that she's going to turn into her dragon form, which is something baffling. So I guess I'll confront this now. So she turns into a dragon and it baffles everyone, right? Including Nomura, who respects the hell out of this dragon. So these people, among these different clans or whatever, they all looked up to the dragons based on the backstory, right? So they see this dragon, and they're like, and Nomura's like, holy shit, it's actually a dragon, right? So here's where things start to go, oh boy. So, why did Raya decide to keep it a secret that they had a dragon with them this entire time? And I mean when she was starting to collect the other people. You know, Boone, the baby, Khan baby, and Mongol man. I don't know what his name is either, unfortunately. So why did she keep it a secret? Now, you might say, well, she clearly didn't trust these people. But she trusted them enough to bring them along. So why did she keep the dragon a secret? She knows the backstory. She respects the dragon too. So why keep the dragon a secret now? It feels like certain elements are starting to waver. And I would like to say that this is character development, but it feels like the writing isn't strong enough to support that claim quite yet. It feels like it's just at the etching towards character development, you know what I mean? Like, it's like it's almost from point A to point B, but somewhere there was just a little, it's like a glitch that just happened, right? That's what it feels like in terms of the writing here. A bit of a snafu in the writing in this little section here. And that part is a little irritating, but it's not the worst part of the theme. It's a little hitch in the wrong direction, but it's not the worst part of the movie. Again, I have to re-emphasize that. So, she, Sisu, I got lost in my notes off of that tangent, apologies, gives them the gift of rain, because she has that ability now. And you would think that with the gift of rain itself, that she would have driven off the demon things, right? But no, they don't get driven off. You'd think that'd be the end of the movie, but it's not. Anyway, so Sisu flies abound, uh, now having that ability as well. I guess that came with the rain, question mark. And it does look impressive as she's sort of drips along the air with her water things underneath her. Uh, anyway, so they have that moment of majesticism happen, and it's all fine and dandy. So anyways, the team are on their last little nugget, the last part of the MacGuffin, and they of course need to travel to Fang. And they go over two plans. The first plan belongs to both Raya and Boone, where they talk about sneaking in, stealing it, and fighting their way there. However, the dragon, Sisu, says that they should just walk in and ask for it politely and give a gift to the antagonist of the movie. And Raya brings up a justification of, are you actually serious? After everything they just did, you want us just to give them another chance? Mind you, in the prior to this, there was the just give them another chance speech about 2 other times in the movie, but, you know, there's counting, and then there's counting. So now we're at our 3rd or 4th, or 5th, I'm not sure which. And Sisu brings her back home, Raya back home, and she talks about her past, about the dragon's past, and about how these dragon siblings that Sisu has, and how the dragons put their faith in her. Now this is a different story from the thing we see at the end, which is where a lot of the conflict of my issue with this movie comes from, by the way. So, that story's all fine and good. The dragons trusted her, she did her part, fine. Because they trusted her or whatever, so yeah, that part's all fine. Anyway, after that old moment, Raya decides, hey, I'm gonna trust your judgment. I'm gonna go with your plan. And so they proceed to do that. By giving this little gift that Raya was given at the beginning of the movie, the one that Nomura tricked Raya with, by giving her this little dragon pendant thing. And at first I thought that dragon pendant thing was going to have a shard in it as well, but because it has a similar glow to it from the shard, I thought that was going to be a thing, but it wasn't, but whatever. Anyway, so, Dragon has their faith plan, so they're doing it. They reach Nomura using Con Baby. Con Baby ninjas her way all the way up to Nomura, stalking up a castle ninja style, and manages to get the dragon thing to her, Nomura. So the mission seems to be looking like it's going to be a successful stealth mission. However, the mom of Nomura claims to have different plans. What are those plans? I really don't know. Like, I guess her plan was to steal it, the orb thing, and then, like, rule over people with it? Question mark? I'm not sure. Like, that part's pretty poorly explained as well. So, the baby's name is given. I think it's Noah, I think. Something like that. but con baby. Anyway, so, uh, so Raya is talking with Nomura. And here we go. So, Raya offers Nomura offers the last stone piece. She has it, obviously. She hands it over. She looks like she's about to hand it over. But as the others are closing in on the location, she also has a crossbow on her. And she has it trained on Raya on this entire section that is happening right now. And, the dragon's there as well, and so on and so forth. So you can see the expression on Nomura is really telling. She looks like she's scared, but still willing to fight even though she was the one that fucked up. But, you know how it is. So, Nomura, being the genius she is, and seeing how things went so far, she shoots the crossbow, but not at Raya. She ends up shooting the dragon. She ends up shooting Sisu. Keep in mind that this was Sisu's idea, not Raya's. Please keep that in mind. So, Sisu, quote-unquote, dies, clashes into the water, is killed, thanks to Nomura, and thus, the orb MacGuffin thing's power is beginning to drain, which allows the June demon things to invade, because now all the water, because their power is based on water, is seeping away. So this allows the Junes to attack Fang, the Fang group. And the death of this Sisu enrages Raya, which is rightfully so. So she's on a death mission, or, she's gunning it, with one goal in mind now. One final battle, as they clash once more as the Junes are invading, and the people are being escorted away by the other characters of this, as these two clash intensely. And the most stupidest line I think I've ever heard is spouted out by Nomura. And I am in awe that this was written in a Disney movie. Get this. Nora blames Raya. She says Raya is as much responsible for the death of Sisu that Nomura is. Keep in mind, that was Sisu's plan. The plan that Raya went along with, and Nomura blames Raya for all of this in part with her. What the actual fuck is she talking about? Nomura is at fault 100%. Don't get it twisted. Don't write that in your movie ever again. That is some bullshit. Nomura deserved whatever consequence came her way, but no, she blames Raya as much as herself for this. Fuck off, and please rewrite your scripts from now on, Disney, for fuck's sake. So, after that baffling line from Nomura, the floor crumbles beneath them, and the two of them, along with everyone else, get swarmed by the June demons. So, in an act of last desperation, Raya, being completely generous, and completely, whatever, at this point, decides to give up her chunk of the MacGuffin orb thing to Nomura, the person who just blamed her for half or more than everything that has occurred, even though, again, 100% Nomura's fault. Don't get it twisted. I guess hashtag Raya did nothing wrong. Am I right? Anyway. So they're all down there, and the rest of the crew also decide to suddenly, since Raya did it, they all just decide to also trust in Nomura in this last ditch effort. They all give her pieces, so now she has the entire thing. The antagonist of the movie has the MacGuffin. She puts it all together in its last ditch effort to burst it outwards. She turns into stone too, but, lo and behold, the orb does its last blast of magic and sets all the Junes away. And thus, everyone in the movie that was stoned is completely freed, including all of the terrible people we met along the way. Because of all the deceitfulness, gets to just live on, I guess. So everyone's set free. So, not only are the people set free, by the way, but the dragons also get to return, which is a nice little boost in confidence to everyone and the dragons, I guess. So everyone's back. The dragons are back, the people are back, everyone's all hunky-dory. Everyone reunites with their families. Raya returns to her father, which is probably the only emotional beat that was actually warranted in this section. Every other one was kind of like, I guess that's kind of cool, but whatever. Anyways, so as Raya returns and reunites with her father, the dragons fly off into the air, and that's the end of the movie. So, here's the thing. I really wanted to like this movie. It has some really solid animation, really cool fighting, and I know what they were trying to do with the big theme of the movie, but boy, did they not land it at the end there. This movie completely crumbles at the end mark of the movie, and it really boils down to just what Nomura said, unfortunately. Like, how unfortunate is that such a small thing could break apart so much, and when you actually start to look at the other pieces, some other pieces actually don't line up with your theme. It's all about, like, hey, keep trusting people, but the people we see, Khan Baby lives in this world where everyone apparently steals, and the Mongol guy is a part of a group that, like, they're ready to fight or whatever. And you see these aspects, and you see them pretty briefly. We don't see a lot of, like, what the father is talking about, which I wish the movie did a lot more of. Like, beyond the little group we see of little segments in the background of, like, oh, look, there's this other person trusting this other person. Like, actually incorporating your theme, even though there are untrustworthy people clearly in each group. Like, actually have your theme sort of, you can actually see it play out without spelling it out. I think that would have saved a lot of the midpoint of the movie from this criticism, but since it doesn't do that at all, it kind of seems like you just saved a bunch of people who are kind of bad. Like, what? Especially Nomura. That is the worst I think I've seen of the bad guy being forgiven for the acts that they commit. Worse than probably Kylo Ren. I'm gonna say it. I don't know, because Kylo Ren's kind of all over the place, right? He's very inconsistent as a Disney Star Wars villain. But Nomura slopes so far in one direction, but then completely says something so far fundamentally off that it's really hard to explain how that one segment of what she just said ruins her entire character. like, that's one thing I think a lot more people should pay attention to in writing, is that, say you have a theme, you should probably avoid such a drastic claim, especially when that claim is not true. It's very aggravating, and again, earlier on in the movie review, I kept comparing it to Moana, and that's because a lot of this does remind me of Moana. There are some differences here and there about, dragging Dwayne's character around and so on and so forth. And he actually, he apologizes profusely to the goddess for screwing things up, and that's all whatever. So yeah, it does remind me of Moana to a degree, in terms of its beginning section. And the other section I want to talk about pretty briefly before I give my score are the characters, besides Nomura's major fuck-up. It does seem like there are aspects of, like, just about to get there that I feel like the characters have, and I should just say character, because Raya is the only one that seems to be etching a little bit, like, oh, she's kind of character developing almost, like, like, kind of doing that. While Sisu remains a constant character, which I don't have an issue with, a character that has a very linear path, when it's divergent from the main character. In fact, I am and going to praise that in Ghost of Tsushima, just to say an example that immediately comes to mind. So I don't have a problem with Sisu as a character. Her goal obviously comes off a little bit, what happens to her kind of makes it a little bit more conflicting, though. That's the issue I have with it. With the more things, like, the more she says, trust people, and then they're betrayed. They are, one time after the other. Once, and then twice, and then 3 times, and then the 4th time coming from Nomura once again, making her outrageous claim that she has no right to make in this movie. And I think they could have made Nomura work, is the thing that's probably the thing that's most aggravating about her character, is that I think they could have made it work. It's just tough to figure out how you could have fixed it. I think the movie could have been a bit longer, first and foremost. Then what you need to do is spend some more time with Nomura and her group at the beginning of the movie. Sort of like a side-by-side thing you got going on. And what you need to do is make it explicitly clear what the fuck was their goal. I mean, again, I assume that they were trying to collect the dragon orb for themselves. What they intended to do after the fact is where I get a little bit confused. It seems like at least the mother wanted to do something more nefarious, and she gets off scot-free, by the way. Again, it's assumed. She never explicitly says that she wants to, like, take over the land. Like, she says expand, which is the furthest they get to saying, like, invading other people's territory. Is kind of like the nice way of saying expand, I think, is what they're going for, question mark? And again, like, it's tough, right? Because I think, again, they could have made that work. And again, I want to talk about more of this in my Ghost of Tsushima thing. And there's another video game that I looked at when I saw the trailer. I went, oh, I see. Because there's interesting aspects to nomadic people who live in a place for, all their lives, and people who happen to come across that nomadic land from their nomadic land, and how that can escalate naturally. Um, but the thing is, they don't really dive into any of that. They don't really dive deep enough into the Fangs group for any of that to be justifiable. That is the biggest problem for me, is that Numara's group, I think that's the problem, is that when you start to expand outside of what we are seeing, because we are seeing it in the movie a little bit, these groups, we're not seeing enough of her group to justify what they're attempting to do. Um, you know, and again, expand. Expand in what way? They could have said expand in a diplomatic way. They could have went that route. I would have actually probably believed that too, based off of everything else so far. That would have made a little bit more sense. But she's based off of the other different groups that are out there, the Mongolish group out there, they're still a bit hesitant on trusting everyone. So something along those lines, to say like, hey, they're trying to do things diplomatically, but they're not. They can't get to every group the same way. That to me would have been a part of a solution, part of a way that they could have written that group, the Fang group in particular, to be like, okay, so they're trying to be as diplomatic as possible. They clearly see this Mongol group as the most threatening group because they're the most aggressive looking. Um, and again, I think this affects Raya's character as well, in terms of how she deals with every situation. Um, you know, and again, there are just like little hints of her character development, to the point where I want to say it's like it's okay-ish. I'm not gonna say it's good. That's for sure. Um, but yeah. So in the end, fighting aside and beautiful animation aside, I do think that in the characterization in the world, and the world building, and the lore, and the theme, because all of these things are attached in this movie, all needed a deeper tackle, a deeper look into, a deeper writing mindset to tackle this type of situation. Because as this movie is, while it's pretty to look at and there's pretty cool fight scenes, I can't recommend this movie beyond those elements. And that is so unfortunate. Because there do feel like there are sparks, right? Sparks of, oh, this looks interesting. Oh, they're going in an interesting direction. But they're not, like, hitting it. They're not nailing it to the degree that they should be. And, Disney should be held to a standard at this point. So, in every other regard, character, story, plot, lore, world building, all of that stuff combined, is where the movie falls flat, which is a majority of the movie, unfortunately. And the minor things that sort of are good, again, the animation itself, the fighting sequences, Raya's character independent of that, I would say is the closest thing you're gonna get to a thumbs in, kind of like here-ish from me. But at the end of the day, if I were to give this movie a score out of 1 to 10, I'm going to have to side with a 3 or 4 out of 10. That is extremely low, and boy, does that stink. I really hope that they continue with their animation endeavors. I really hope that they continue to explore new ideas. Again, this seems like a completely separate thing for Disney in terms of things they're trying out, but I wouldn't say watch this on Disney Plus. I probably wouldn't even say. I would say watch it, but keep in mind, like, lower your expectations in terms of the bigger elements of, movie stuff. And that's all I can really say for Raya and the Last Dragon. So this was more of a rant than a review, but, that's what you get when you don't do your job, I guess. So if you ended up enjoying this sort of review/rant, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One to head over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are desperately needed. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.